Hello and welcome to Storycrafting Sessions Drafting. This is our first panel of the day, Making a Habit, Building a Writing Routine, and I am your host, Diana Gunn. I am the creator of the Weeknight Writers Group, and I am really excited to bring this first event of the year to you. Before we get started, there are some basic housekeeping things that I want to get through. First off, I want to say a big thank you to Renaissance Press for sponsoring this event and all of our events. It's thanks to them that we are able to have live captions and make these events more accessible, which is really great. Renaissance Press is a small Canadian publisher dedicated to publishing diverse voices. They publish a lot of really great, especially queer stuff and disabled stories. And we've had some panelists from Renaissance before, and they're just all around great people. Do check them out. I have posted a link in the Zoom chat, and I will post another one later. I also wanted to remind you all that there is a conference Discord where you can continue the conversation after the panel, and we also have some fun activities and writing discussion questions planned for over there. So that's going to be really great. And finally, I do want to, on a more serious note, acknowledge that we are the organizers of this event, and most of the panelists at this event do live on stolen Indigenous land, and that it is important to bear in mind the original owners of this land and also the Indigenous people who are still actively fighting to care for this land in a society that is very intent on destruction in the name of cash. So I do greatly encourage you to research current Indigenous fights, especially around environmentalism and pipelines, and to support where you can. And I believe that is all of the pre-panel housekeeping that we need to. Oh, right, the Ko-Fi. We also do have a Ko-Fi where you can contribute financially to Weeknight Writers. We have a one-time contribution system, and you can also join our sustaining membership program, which gives you access to some really cool benefits like the ability to vote on topics for future panels, and our Weeknight Writers Pro Discord, where we have daily writing check-ins and a whole bunch of other cool stuff, including workshops. And we are going to be launching even more stuff for our sustaining members in the coming months. So that is a really cool thing to check out. All right, now that we are actually done all of the housekeeping, let's get started with some introductions. Please introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, and what brings you to this panel. And let's start with Kelly.
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Doherty. I go by she, her pronouns, and I really wanted to join this panel only because I'm very curious about what other writers do. And also I'm here for non-traditional. So that's me.
Awesome. Anyone want to go next, or do I have to call names?
I can go. My name is Serena Ulibari. My pronouns are she, her. And when I signed up for this panel, I'm sure that I thought that I had something really interesting to say about it, and we'll see if that's true.
Fair enough.
Hi, everyone. My name is Priya Sridhar. I have she, her pronouns. The reason why I signed up for this panel is I really enjoy doing Storycraft whenever panels are open, and I enjoy participating because Diana is very good at organizing them. And whether I have anything useful to say on writing habits or not, I can at least relay my experience, and I hope it helps our audience.
Sounds good. And Jade?
Hi, I'm Jade Benjamin. I'm a writer and an editor. I go by she, her pronouns, and it took me a really long time to develop anything that even resembled a habit. So I am both curious to relay my experience and hear of the experiences of others.
Awesome. Jade is also my super secret behind the scenes co-organizer. The reason most of you have not heard of her is because she doesn't have Twitter. Which is mostly where we exist, but she is a massive help, and I could not do this without her. So she's cool. Check her out. All right, let's get into our questions. I wanted to start today with one of the most common pieces of writing advice that I know gets a lot of people very, I don't know if excited is the right term, but there are a lot of very strong opinions on this. So let's start with the heavy hitter. The advice to write every day. What do you think of that advice? Do you actually write every day? And do you think that it is important or even essential for people to write every day? And let's go in reverse order this time. So we'll start with Jade.
Okay. All right. Writing every day. For a long time, I thought this actually meant putting words either into my computer or on a piece of paper and like having some kind of count. And I would get really depressed if I had a low count at the end of the day. But more recently, I've actually come to understand, especially with learning a lot of stuff that with my editing side of the business, that a lot of thinking goes into writing as well. So you could just spend the day organizing some things in your head, and that still counts as writing to me. And if I go by that standard, then yes, I do write every day.
Love it. Priya?
So I do write every day, but it's not necessarily something I would recommend because it took years to build up the habit. And then I was advised to break the habit because I was writing too much and I was burning out, especially during the pandemic. And I was told, take a day off. And I try, but it's a weird contradiction. It's the days off where I want to write the most. And it's the days where I actually have to get something done that the writing is harder. So I do recommend for people to find out who you are, because obviously you do need to write if you want to make it as a career, because you have to meet deadlines, you have to get those pitches in, you have to make sure your editors receive your edits on time. Otherwise, you might get that email, which I sometimes get guiltily asking, okay, how's this piece coming? And I'm like, yeah, here, I'll get it done. But I think you need to figure out who you are, because some people can write every day and other people, it's better for them not to, because they can take a time for their brain to recharge. And so I do gamify, I use For the Words, because it's a website where you can use words, typing to fight monsters and go on fantasy quests. So it gamifies the system. And has quite interesting lore. The NaNoWriMo, they recently got to hatch a dragon, which was super exciting. And they have some fun stuff for Camp NaNoWriMo, which starts next Saturday. So get those projects set up if you haven't already. And don't be afraid to set small goals rather than big ones.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely feel you on the it's when I'm actively trying to take time off from writing that all of a sudden I have like 1,800 ideas, and when I actually like am trying to like sit at my computer and write, half the time it just doesn't happen. Uh, brains are wild. Serena, what are your thoughts on the advice to write every day?
Sure. So it's always my goal to write every day, but it doesn't always happen. And I don't beat myself up about it when it doesn't happen. So I unlike a lot of writers, I don't have a full-time day job that eats up my time. I run my own company, so I have a lot of responsibilities, but I can kind of do things on my own time and on my own schedule. So I don't have a full-time day job. I also don't have children. And so a lot of writers will hear that and be like, you don't have a job, you don't have kids, you must be able to just write all the time. Well, but what I do have is depression and chronic pain. And so there are some days that I don't accomplish much of anything, right? Or that, I only have the energy to do, one task. And if it's going to be writing or doing the thing for my company that actually makes money, well, I'm going to choose the other. So, so there are things that get in the way of writing. But I try not to go more than 2 days in a row without writing. If I'm in a really bad spell and I know it's been more than 2 days, I will make myself do it. But that may not look like pulling out the laptop and writing brand new words. That may not look like, writing on or working on the novel project that I was working on. It might look like, brainstorming in my notes app so I don't have to leave my chair, or it might look like doing a read through revision where I'm reading through and tinkering a little bit, and rather than doing a whole new thing. So so I really agree with what the other panelists have said about writing in your head or doing other things. that that still count as writing. So that's kind of my approach, but I'm definitely the kind of writer that accomplishes more when I do a little bit every day rather than putting it off and then trying to do it all at once. Some writers work really well that way. Some are binge writers, and that's fine. But I, like Priya said, learn who you are, learn about yourself. And I am definitely a better writer when I am able to put aside a little bit of time, whether that's 15 minutes, whether it's 2 hours, whether it's 4, whatever. A little bit every day gets me there better than trying to do it all at once. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also am someone who I run my own business. I have control of my hours, and I do not have any human children, but I do have 3 very demanding cats, and I also do have chronic pain and depression. And yeah, sometimes I think about how much I could get done if I had like the no kids and the like flexible job situation and no chronic pain or depression. It would be like your girl would be writing dozens of books every year. Okay, maybe not
Right, like
dozens,
a
but like
brain and body that work,
yeah,
if
if I could just have those 2 things, I would have a lot more books. Kelly, what are your thoughts on writing every day?
Yeah, so for me personally, I'm actually a binge writer. I do work on like brainstorming during the week because I do have a full-time job, and I also am a freelance editor afterwards. So my week is very tied up. And I also have 2 cats. But I brainstorm during the week. So I do lots of character creation, or I think about a really cool scene, or I take notes on my notes app, that kind of thing. But I chunk out my time. On Saturday and Sundays are my writing days, and I write for like a good 4 hours because I just work better that way. I can really sink into my story and really get into the flow of writing. I have to actually get into the flow in order for me to actually want to write something. But I think the idea of writing every day, like everybody's been saying, it really depends on you. It depends on your schedule. It depends on your motivation. It depends on what kind of writer you want to be. And I don't think you have to write every day to be a writer. I think thinking that is a little bit harmful, but I do think that if you find the way that you want to write and you do it successfully and you build your own routine, then it works for you.
Absolutely. I also, it's interesting for me because when I'm drafting, I often write small bits every day, but when I'm revising, I really need those big chunks of time to get into the right zone. Speaking of getting into the right zone, what routines do you use to get yourself into the mood to write? No volunteers, so I'm just gonna
I
pick
will go.
Serena. Oh, you will
I'll
go?
go. Yeah, why not? So different things that I get into the mood to write. My big thing is music. I listen to, since I'm currently writing a fantasy series, I listen to a lot of fantasy music. So it's a lot of like Lord of the Rings or How to Train Your Dragon or fantasy tavern music, that kind of thing. And I feel like for me personally, just having that audio, it cannot have any lyrics. I cannot write with lyrics, so I'm not a coffee house writer. But as long as it has a melody in the background, it really just puts me in the mood to write. And I also have to make a cup of tea.
What kind of tea?
It varies. Right now, I'm actually drinking black tea, but I also like green tea.
Excellent. Serena?
I am also a tea drinker. Yeah, I pretty much always have to have my tea. If it's in the morning, it's green tea. If it's in the afternoon, it's chamomile. I am a coffee shop writer. I do my best work in coffee shops. Sometimes the ambient noise and the music is good for that. And sometimes I have to take my noise canceling headphones and just like focus. But I think for me, like, getting dressed, driving to the coffee shop, buying my $5, latte or whatever, like that, that commits me, to doing it. And that if I'm messing around on social media or something, I feel like I'm, really wasting my opportunity. So I'm better able to focus when I'm at a coffee shop. I also, I do like the sort of ambient sound and seeing different people and seeing, the things going on and hearing. I'm a notorious eavesdropper. if you are sitting nearby me, I'm listening to what you're saying. And I don't think I've ever like just taken a conversation that I've overheard and like put it in a story. I don't do that. But I feel like when I have writer's block or something, it's because of just like a stagnation in my life and, and not seeing new things, not hearing new things. So when I go to a coffee shop, I'm experiencing all these like new stimulus, and it all just kind of goes into this filter of like how humans operate and how people are, and that all kind of feeds into my creation of characters and my creation of world. So I like coffee shops for that. I just see different people, I hear different things, and that all kind of feeds into my creativity in a weird meat grinder kind of way, I guess. And I'll ditto what Kelly said about music. I tend to listen to music without lyrics, unless it's at the coffee shop, and that's okay. Or I don't know, I'm weird. So if I'm working on like a short story, or something that doesn't have like a playlist associated with it, random like Lindsay Sterling radio or something that's musical but not lyrical is what I listen to. But I will, when I'm working on a novel project or a novella project, I hear my story in songs that I hear just kind of on the radio or something, and then I'll create a playlist from that. And then when I sit down to work on that project, I start that playlist and it gets me into that world, but I kind of develop it, pulling from here and there.
Awesome. Jade?
Like Kelly, I'm also a bit of a binge writer in the sense of actually putting words on paper. So like I said before, I tend to try to write every day, but some of that writing ends up being in my head, and I do tend to see what I'm trying to write before I try to put it on paper. So in order to get like that visualization, I'll spend a lot of time sort of going over it like a movie in my head. And sometimes it takes a couple days for that to fully coagulate enough for me to sit down and write it down. And then when I sit and write it down, I'll sit and write for like 4 hours and just get that piece out of my head. The interesting thing is I tend not to be able to write to music at all, lyrics or no. I'm a little weird that way. I actually need to write to some kind of conversation in the background, but it also needs to be conversations I've heard before. So I tend to find myself rewatching things like Buffy or Criminal Minds or Law and Order, like something very formulaic in the background that is moving, but is kind of like helping the things in the back of my head come to the front, if that makes sense. I also drink a lot of tea.
Awesome. And Pri, I don't think we've heard from you on this question yet.
No, well, I guess first just ask our panelists, Team Spike or Team Angel, if we're talking Buffy.
Oh, that's so tricky. I like both.
Team Spike.
It's true.
I mean, honestly, they're kind of both awful, like relationship-wise for different reasons, but Spike is hotter, so Team Spike.
Spike shows more overall growth as a character, which is why I enjoy him, although I prefer Angel.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go Angel.
I think so too. I mean, the only thing in Angel's favor is he became a puppet for an episode in a spin-off episode and actually beat Spike, despite, being a puppet.
Which was absolutely hilarious.
It's one of the best scenes ever, that this little sock Muppet is beating up an immortal vampire and totally thrashes him. But in terms of habits, routines that I do are something called body doubling. So it's something that my predecessor in my nano group, Valerie Valdez, started. Awesome speculative fiction writer and a great friend to have. Love you, Valerie. And she would host writing sessions in coffee shops every Sunday. And after she moved, I took over that to introduce people, where we do time sessions together and then talk nerd stuff during the break. And one of the hardest things is when you're being with nerds is you have to remember you have to stop talking about cool stuff and write. And since the pandemic started, I haven't really done that. I do miss the coffee shop. I just keep overthinking about it. I'm thinking about, okay, as liaison, how responsible am I? How do I make sure this place has good ventilation? Because who worries about ventilation when you're at a Panera Bread? and you're debating which seasonal soup to get with your writing. But I do currently run sessions on Zoom, and I write with a friend about 2 or 3 days a week, which he said he found it's very helpful because when you're writing with someone, you're more compelled to start and finish, and we can also talk about each other's works. And I've been asking for his pointers as well because I made some hamantaschen after seeing everyone making them for Purim, and they've been giving me feedback on how to write about it. Since hamantaschen is typically non-gluten-free or made with ghee, but it is really good. So I think body doubling has helped with that. But I also use, as I mentioned, For the Words does help to make sure I get in the words by midnight. So that's both a good and a bad thing for routines, that if your day is unpredictable, as long as you find a way to squeeze in that time, then you're good.
Awesome. Can you share a link to For the Words in the Zoom chat as well? That would be great. Just
Yes.
for anyone who doesn't know
Yes,
it.
absolutely. And they will have I think right now you get a free trial, and they usually have promotions around NaNoWriMo time. So if there's anything you want to try when the trial is done, then you definitely should. So I'm just typing it in. Definitely let me know if the URL works.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we are going to, of my questions, and then we're going to move into audience questions. There are already a couple of audience questions, but if you have a new question, please do ask it in the Zoom chat. We do not allow anyone except panelists to stream audio or video, just in order to protect our panelists and in order to make sure that we can legally record and post the panels later on without infringing on anyone's privacy. So my next question is about space. Do you have a specific writing space that you prefer or a place that you prefer to go to write? And if so, what makes this space special? Anyone want to start?
I'll go. I generally write in my bedroom, which is obviously not the most conducive thing, especially if you're working remotely. So I don't necessarily, again, it's not something I recommend. This is a case of do as I say, not as I do. But my bedroom always feels safe. It's where I have all my books, which are currently laying in a bit of disarray right now. It's where I can grab the laptop pad I have. So if I don't want to write at my desk, if I want to write in a chair or on the bed, I can grab it and it'll reduce back pain or burning my thighs off. So this is a laptop pad, and this is available at most stores. I got this with a Barnes & Noble gift card that someone sent me as an early Christmas gift. And I really enjoy having everything around me and positivity. Like I have stress balls, I have a Jack Skellington snow globe that I can shake, and I have one of these bottles, these mood bottles, exactly.
This is my Jack Skellington snow globe. He's kind of filthy. I need to wash him, but I just thought we should compare notes. Mine is Santa.
Mine is just Jack, and I think it was from Spirit Halloween because I got it after everyone was out of Jack, so to speak. Because he's really hard to find after Halloween is over for some reason.
It's true.
I guess no one appreciates the king of Halloween having an existential crisis.
What a shame. Kelly, what about your writing space?
Yeah, so for me, since I don't go to a coffee shop, I tend to just write on my couch, which is not inspiring at all. But I also have a laptop pad, like Prayer was saying, and I usually have my tea next to me. I put on fantasy music and then I just sink into it. Bonus points if my cat's asleep next to me, because that's just great and cozy and wonderful. But I just write on the couch, super simple.
Awesome. Jade?
So a while ago, I used to write on my laptop a lot, but then I found that it was getting to be a hassle to take it out every time I wanted to write. So now I write just in the Notes app on my phone. And then whenever I've gotten too much in there to scroll through in a reasonable amount of time, I will transfer it to a collective document on my computer. But I like that I can take my Notes app anywhere, and I do, because like a lot of times I do write on my couch, but I can also write on the bus, while I'm waiting for coffee, or while I'm walking my dog. I actually do a fair amount of that when I have two hands. I currently only have one hand, so it's a little bit more limited at the moment. But yeah, I pretty much like writing in the Notes app and have been doing that for at least the last 3 years, primarily because it's so easy to just write wherever I am.
Fair enough. Serena?
So as I mentioned before, I am a coffee shop writer, but it's not sustainable to do that every day, obviously. When I do go, I think about, I said my $5 latte. I think of that as like not just the expensive drink, but like that I'm using that to rent the table and rent the space for an hour or 2 hours or something. That's kind of how I justify it. But obviously can't do that every day. So in terms of like my house, I don't have a specific place. I have a desk, I have a chair, there's there's the kitchen table, there's the couch. I move around and I don't have a specific place that works. It's just whatever works for that day. And that has to do with the chronic pain too, of like, can I sit in my chair, or can I sit at my desk all day, or not all day, but for the time. But I'm really, I kind of can write anywhere. And I have, like Jade said, I've written stories on the bus. I've written at parks. I've written, in, backseat of the car, like whatever, I can write wherever. And I think that's kind of important to develop that flexibility as a writer, because if you are so rigid about like, I need this particular thing and this particular tea and this particular pen or whatever, like, maybe that is what works best for you. But if you're like, oh, I don't have that, so I just can't do it. Like, that's kind of an enabling, that slide toward not writing. And so I think it's important to develop the flexibility to be able to kind of write anywhere. When I was in grad school, one of my instructors was Stephen Graham Jones, who's a fairly famous horror writer. And he's definitely the type that writes anywhere he can. He's always writing. And I was at an event with another writer where he was in the back, like instead of listening to the writer, maybe he's half listening. He's writing a story like in the back, sitting in the back, writing his own thing while the presenter's going on. And I rode the bus home that night and said, you know what, because I had kind of gotten stuck in this, like, I have to have this particular thing to write. And I was like, you know what, on the bus ride home, this 12-minute bus ride home, I'm going to write a piece of flash fiction, and I'm going to start it on the bus and I'm going to finish it before I get off my stop. And, and just challenge myself to do that. And I did that, and it was a good story, and it got published and it got translated. And so, it proved to me that I don't need that particular space to write, that I can, if I put my mind to it, I can write pretty much anywhere.
Awesome. So we touched on it a little bit, but we have two audience questions that are kind of similar. So I'm going to combine them. One person asked if you need a notebook and pen for writing, and another person asked what apps you use. So the question is, what tools like software or physical tools technology do you use for your writing, and what makes these tools more like appealing to you?
I
have something to say about this, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I used to think that I was the type of writer who needed to write by hand. I used to always write things longhand, and then I would transcribe them into a Word document. I did NaNoWriMo a couple years ago and decided, you know what, I'm just gonna type everything. And I was surprised to find that I accomplished more, I got more words down, and that they were cleaner, and that it was easier for me to do it by just typing. So that kind of destroyed that notion that that writing by hand was an important part of my process. So now I tend to do things on the computer, and I don't tend to do things longhand anymore.
Jade?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple different things that I use for day-to-day and like drafting. I do generally tend to use my Notes app and compile that in a Google or Word document on my computer, but I also use Plotter. especially if I have more than one point of view, because this helps me organize, make sure everybody's coming together at the right points and information is being relayed between characters in the right points. But that usually comes in almost on the first edit when I'm taking apart that full draft that I've compiled with all the notes. And I think there's something else I use too, but I can't remember at the moment. Maybe come back to me.
All right. Kelly?
Yeah, so for me, I actually just use Word when I'm actively sitting and writing on my laptop. I found that trying different softwares like Scribe or those sort of things just didn't work for me. So I just default to Word. Very basic. When I'm out and about, I do use my Notes app, and I also really like taking voice memos too. Like if I'm walking and I come up with an idea, I just go into a voice memo and do it like that. But yeah, super basic, Word all the way.
Awesome. Priya?
I do admit I'm the same way, and I always thought it's just because I became super impatient. I did for a while would write entire short stories in longhand and then transfer them to the computer. But these days, usually I just use notebooks for taking down ideas or random things. And sometimes not even. If you're talking with a friend sometimes, you can look at those chat logs. And that can be a good thing because if you're bouncing ideas off a friend or if they have very useful information, it can help. One tool that I have used on and off, and I've made it a habit to use it daily, is the Midori notebook. So this is a note, and again, you don't need a fancy notebook if you are going to do that. You can get a very simple $3 notebook and cheap pens at any grocery store or CVS. So you do not need to get the fancy Barnes and Noble stuff. It's just more that it's a very nice indulgence to get when you see those nice notebooks and you see, oh, they're on sale. I want them because they're less likely to fall apart. At least it's been my experience. Cheap notebooks are more likely to fall apart, which is why we gravitate towards the nice ones. The Midori is basically a leather cover. Oh, Midori, Midori. But generally, it's a notebook that contains multiple little books. So I can organize it based on what's in here. And so I can have one notebook on characters, on plots and themes. And I also have commonplace, which is the one I thought the most. I usually put random thoughts there. But if I do say get an idea about a setting, if say I'm traveling and I'm thinking, oh, this bridge is cool, it's causing a bit of vertigo, I could put that in. Or a cave that somehow has a statue in the middle that's hard to reach. I feel like that could be an interesting setting. And it's not necessarily you have to use everything. It's more a place where you can gather stuff in an organized fashion. But obviously, the people recommend starting with a notebook and pen because it's simple. But there are totally other tools that you can use. I just like using stuff that's basic because I get impatient. Something that is something, and so you have to go with what works for you. I admit I'm trying out a few apps currently. I'm trying out the Pro Writing Aid Academy for lectures and such, but it is super expensive. So I'm still debating. I'm looking at it and seeing if it's worth the investment since they charge per quarter and not per year. But it has multiple video lectures on different genres and writing techniques. So I'm going to be reviewing them and seeing how they look.
Awesome. Yeah, I think there are a huge number of tools that are available to writers, and I think for a lot of people, the simplest thing is the best thing. But I do think there are definitely advantages to things like Scrivener. I personally, I do all of my drafting in for novels in Scrivener, and for short stories, I usually use Word because it's not really worth all of the extra stuff for Scrivener. But I find Scrivener very helpful for writing multiple POV stories because it's just so easy to move around the sections. And for the longest time, I actually did all of my notes and world building in binders. I have like a collection of binders, but the problem about binders is that sooner or later, if you want to have a backup, you have to digitize it, which means you either have to spend a huge amount of time scanning or typing stuff up. So now I do very little world building in my binders, and I do most of it on the computer, but I also journal by hand. I buy cheap notebooks. I live next to Dollarama. I buy $3 notebooks. Uh, and they're great. They do me quite well. And I use those for my journaling. And often, if I'm really stuck on a scene, what I'll do is I'll actually journal about that scene in my notebook, because there is something different about writing by hand. It does activate a different part of my creativity, but it is also very slow. Like, oh, some people can write very fast by hand, but the majority of us are much faster when we type, right? So it is much easier for us to use digital tools. All right, I'm not seeing any new audience questions other than put the name of the books and the apps in the chat. So we've already got Pro Writing Aid Academy and the Midori Notebook. I think, Jade, you just use the like notes app on your phone, right?
Yeah, and I do use Plotter too. I like that because it helps me section out stuff, but I mostly use it after I've already drafted. So like beginning edits.
Okay. If you can just drop a link to Plotter in the Zoom chat, that would be greatly appreciated. It looks like we don't have any more audience questions right now, so I'm going to return to one of my questions, but we do still have time to take audience questions. So if people want to ask those in the chat, that's great. My next question is something that we've sort of already touched on a little bit in our answers, but I would like a more detailed overview of this, which is, how did you establish your current writing routine? What brought you to this point of having the routine you have now? Let's start with Kelly this time.
Yeah, so for me, my writing routine, like I mentioned before, is brainstorming during the weeknights and then having big chunks of time during the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, about 4 hours or so. And I came to that out of necessity because I couldn't carve out enough time during the week that made it worthwhile for me to actually like sit down and try to write a scene. I did actually try to do 250 words a day in May last year, which was really fun. I had a good time, but at the end of it, I just really hated it because I felt like I had to write 250 words, and I did. I did, but I did not enjoy the process of doing it. So it was really out of necessity. After work and after freelance editing, I just don't have the creative brain power to write, to like write. And so that's why I brainstorm. And that's why I do carve out time during the weekends, because that's my writing time. That's when I dedicate to myself and to my worlds. And yeah, I just think you have to find something that works for you. Everybody's going to be different. If you want to write every day and write small word count every day, that works great. If you can write large chunks if you could dedicate like large chunks of time during the week, that's great too. You just have to find something that works for you, because that's the only way you're actually going to be consistent about it. I found that the weekend is the only time that I can actually write for a good amount of time and feel good about what I did. And so that's what I go with.
Awesome. Jade?
Oh, so I started NaNoWriMo ages ago, but I would never finish it because I would set myself a daily word count that I would never meet. Later found out that was partly because of my ADHD and my resistance to trying to have any kind of routine. But the need to write never disappeared. So I'm also a flow writer, so I have to kind of be in a flow, kind of know where at least to get in and start writing a scene before I can just kind of sit down and dump. But once I got my diagnosis for ADHD and began to be a little easier on myself about not hitting a certain word count every day, what I would find is whenever I had like a decent chunk of time, like at least 2 to 4 hours, I would write. It would just take me a little bit to kind of get in. And then if I was not interrupted, then I could actually have a decent writing session. So my writing habit has been to just locate at least 3 times a week where I can have that uninterrupted flow time and actually get some words down. And it looks different every week. And that's partly because of my ADHD. I don't know if anyone else has that, but it can make everything not look very structured. So I've learned to give myself some grace with my goals, and it stopped looking less like a daily, I need to do this, and more of a, when can I jump into this? And by trying to create a positive attitude around it and be able to have the flexibility to do it anywhere. So I didn't have to have one spot, and like a whole bunch of little pieces coming together to help me be able to recognize times when I can actually get decent writing time within my week.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Priya, you want to go next?
Yeah, as a fellow ADHD person, I feel that pain a lot. It's very easy to get distracted by writing when there's so many cool things that are out there. And I jokingly describe it as the shiny from a Trios of Horror episode where Neil Gaiman plays a cat and says shiny when Lisa flashes a light in darkness. But in all seriousness, it took me basically using technology to build a routine. The technologification, as one of my friends would joke. So I started in college using a free website called 750words.com. And it is free. You can do the settings, and your goal is to try and make 750 words a day in various ways. It doesn't matter what you write or what you do. And the paid version, which is about $5 a month, allows you to schedule days off, which is useful if you're traveling with people that don't like to see you writing all the time and being an introvert. But that did help me build a routine because it built the game of trying to get the words in by midnight. And it does also help if you have, it does help having people that write at the same time you do. I'm also a night owl, so it's much harder for me to write during the day than at night, which is obviously not a good thing if you have a day job and you have chores and errands in the morning. But it does help when you do have people with you that can support you in your writing habits. And that's always going to be a work in progress. Though the internet has made things simpler, it's a lot easier to find writing groups that can cater to your habits, or creating one that does. Because I did create a writer support group in 2017, and I try to make sure that it accommodates people who wish to participate. So if people would rather write at night, I try to tell them you have access. If you need to set sprints using the Sprinto bot, feel free. Or if you want to set a timer using either, you can use a time, you can also use, some people on YouTube when they stream, they use little timers, and you can find affordable cute kitchen timers on Amazon or at any grocery store. But in addition, but it's basically building the routine means, as we mentioned, finding out who you are, trying different things, and also knowing when to stop when your body or your mind is telling you something explicitly isn't working. And some people can't sprint. They say it doesn't work for them to have all that pressure to try and write within a time limit. Other people do need it. They do need it. But it's always going to be a work in progress about building a routine. And mine's always changing based on the people with whom I interact, as well as time constraints and deadlines, and also what new tools may come out. So always feel free to explore within your resources and your availability, and always take care of your mind and your headspace.
Absolutely. If that writing support group is something that you are still running and something that people can join, please do share a link for folks. I think a lot of people here would find that really helpful. Serena, your thoughts on this question?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I'm more of the like tortoise writer, rather than tortoise rather than the hare. Little bit every day is how I tend to work better. And so things like the sprints stress me out. I'm not a sprinter. So as far as how I learned this about myself and how I developed this, long ago when I was in college, I had a creative writing professor who required us to keep what he called a treadmill journal for writing. So this was just part of our grade. Every time we sat down to write, we would, record what time we started, what we thought we were going to work on. And then we'd do our writing session. And then, when we're finished, record the time that you end, the word count or, whatever, and what you did and how it went. Just a couple sentences, like, your goal is I'm going to work on characterization of this character. And at the end, you're like, well, I didn't really work on characterization, but I figured out this other plot point or whatever. And so it was just a little like, little mini journal every time you sat down to write. And I don't do that anymore, but the idea of it, I think, really stuck with me, of just kind of approaching it in this sort of workman-like way. And that's that slow and steady, and also the not having the pressure of like, you know, setting particular goals. Like, I mean, having a goal, but not being real strict about it. Like, you know, this is what I think I'm going to do. Here's what I did instead. And just approaching it in that kind of like practical type way, I think really influenced the way that I work, and the way that I, you know, don't really pressure myself to hit a particular word count or anything. I just kind of little bit here, a little bit every day. Slow and steady wins the race is kind of how I approach. So, but that's a technique that could be useful for some people. That idea, the treadmill journal for writing.
Awesome. Yeah, I really like that idea of the treadmill journal. It's a really good way to like track the habit. And also I feel like that is particularly useful when you're just starting to establish a writing habit, because that can help you get a better feel for when you have your most successful writing sessions. It could even be interesting to, like, if you're like writing in different places, have a version of that, but you do something more extensive where it's like you also record where you're writing, so that you can get a feel for, okay, do I write best at my desk? Do I write best on the couch? Do I write best, you know, in a park or a coffee shop? I think that is a really great thing. There have been some more questions about body doubling in the chat. Specifically, we have had a question from a night owl. Is anyone aware of a specific virtual body doubling group for writers at night? Priya, do you have any leads? You're the self-proclaimed night owl.
I'm a night owl, but I'm also a very introverted night owl. But in all seriousness, there are both free and paid resources where you can find people who will write with you. Dream Foundry, whose conference for speculative fiction is coming up next month. So sign up, free registration, and you can do some chats with editors in the speculative fiction market if you're inclined. Does have a channel of finding partners and writing groups. And they also have a Sprint channel, so you can use that to work with fellow night owls. Kat Rambo's Patreon Discord costs about $5 a month to join on Patreon, but she also has a feral co-working area where you can ping people at different times of the day to find out who is writing and who isn't. And she did used to host sessions at all times of the day, or ask her moderators to host them. So those are the two that I use. And don't forget, on Discord, you can create your own server and curate with other night owls if you cannot find the space you have. I like the line that Neil Gaiman has in Instructions, a poem on how to survive fairy tales, to either find a home or make a home or rest. And sometimes if that space doesn't exist, you have to go out there and make it. But also don't overstrain yourself. Keep it simple if you want to keep it a small group with people you trust, because you only need one person who might just come in that just decides to be an utter jerk about it. And so that's why I'm very particular about who I write with, because one jerk can't throw off your writing routine. Sometimes you'll be the jerk, or sometimes your cat will be the jerk. I've seen many photos of people whose cats suddenly peer at them and decide it is not the time for writing, either holding their hand or their laptop hostage. So don't be afraid that if these resources don't work, to go out and find other ones. But Dream Foundry and Cat Rambo's Discords are the ones I recommend. I'm very particular about who I accept in the support group. So if you want to audition, so to speak, just message me through the WWC Discord. My DMs are open, and I'll find out, are you a good person? Are you someone who wants to watch the world burn?
Can we be
Why are you so
both?
serious?
Because I mean, I like to think I'm a good person, but also I would really like to burn capitalism down. Like
Okay,
a
but
lot.
not your fellow writers. That's a big
Yeah,
difference.
yeah, I like my fellow writers. I will also say the obligatory, the Weeknight Writers Pro Discord, which is part of our sustaining membership program. We do actually have virtual writing sessions on Friday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. EST. Not super late, but it's, you know, kind of more of a nighttime thing. We don't do video because I'm sorry, by the end of the week, by Friday night, you don't want to see me. Like, I can like get myself cleaned up on Saturday, but like you don't want to see me Friday night. But we do have that, and I will be sharing a link to that shortly. It is $5 a month for access to that Discord. I shared the Dream Foundry. Priya, if you also want to share Cat Rambo's Discord, that would be great. So there are definitely options for finding community and having group writing sprints at all times. Another thing that you can also do is like look for people who aren't necessarily night owls, but maybe work in different time zones. So if you're in EST and you join a group where people are in, I think it's PST is 3 hours behind us. And they could all be writing at 7 or 8, so like, you know, normal evening hour, and you could be writing at like 11 at night and nobody needs to know. So that is a great thing about the internet. You can always find people. All right, so we only have a few minutes left, so I am going to do one last rapid fire question. What if you could only give one piece of advice to someone trying to build a writing habit for the first time, what would it be? Let's start with Serena.
Do NaNoWriMo. And commit to finishing it, because you will learn so much about yourself, about where you write best, when you write best, whether you're the type that can do it every day or whether you need to save up and do it all over, you know, a weekend. And what motivates you too. What kind of little tricks do you use can you use to motivate yourself? Is it the streak? Do you like seeing that little graph go up? Do you know, is it, do you need to have a cookie after a successful thing? Like whatever, you know, you will learn so much about yourself by doing NaNoWriMo. I think it's such a powerful tool. Maybe you come out of it with a, you know, good piece of writing, maybe not, who cares? The goal is see what works for you. And NaNoWriMo is a good, you know, fire iron to learn that about yourself.
Awesome. Jade?
I would say start keeping some metrics on yourself. Like even when I was writing by hand in sort of like I used to use those really cheap like $3 notebooks, and just on the inside of the cover page, I would just keep like a little shorthand journal of when I would write and how long I would write for and how many words that ended up in. Like just those 3 things. And every time I write, I would put all of those in there. And then by the time you fill that up, by the time you run out of notebook pages or computer pages or whatever, you'll have a much better idea of what gets in the way of your writing. This is actually more important to me than what works, because if I can remove the things that get in the way, then I can write anywhere, even if it's only a little bit. So if I can make it so I can take my notes everywhere with me and write everywhere, then even if I write only 50 words, I'm still writing, but it hasn't stopped me from writing. So I like recording my metrics less to see my success than to be able to remove things that can prevent any success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Priya?
So I do agree, you do have to find out what will distract you. And there are sometimes things you can't control. Say if you have siblings, that will come in and
But
start
awareness
badgering
is
you.
good.
Awareness is good. And or having cats or dogs that suddenly decide it's their time. And what we found is finding out if decoy laptops work. There are actually places that make cardboard scratching post laptops with fish icons.
That's
It's also a good
amazing.
way if you want your cat to go viral on TikTok, if they decide playing with that mouse is more interesting. One of my friends' cats went viral on TikTok for playing with a laptop and shredding it to bits because cats. But I do agree, if you're building your routine, the first is, if you can't track your metrics, because trying to track your own brain can sometimes be an exercise in itself, I think first off, you've got to be very kind to yourself when you're experimenting. You do want to find out what works, what doesn't work. And that's always going to be a journey. Brains are changing and minds are always changing. There are things we didn't think that would be happening in 2020 that would be happening now. And just like comments, writing with a new puppy is not easy. And cats enjoy knocking things off flat surfaces can be a challenge. Mike, you speak the truth a lot. And so it just be kind to yourself, because when you're starting out, you're not under pressure. You're basically, Steve's remark, cat tries to help by sitting in my lap, always a good thing. I'm super jealous as someone who does not have a cat. But be kind, because you are all just starting out. If you're starting out, or if you're established and you're looking for a change, same thing. The kindness is important. And I guess at the risk of sounding like Tumblr advice, have you drunk water today? Did you get enough sleep the night before? Have you gone out? Whether at day or at nighttime? Because one of my vices is I don't get enough sunlight, and I live in South Florida, so shame on me. But I do, even if I don't go out in the sun every day for a few minutes, I at least try to go out and do a walk. And so even just remembering to take care of yourself, because humans are sort of like plants. We do need
That's
water,
literally why
we
I
do
have a
need
dog.
rest.
Yeah, I have to say though, Priya,
I have a dog to
feel
force
like-
me to walk.
I feel like you have to try to not get enough sunlight living in South Florida. Like,
No, I have a vitamin D deficiency. I've had it for several years. So I'm a vampire.
wild. Kelly, your one piece of advice?
Yeah, so I'll make it quick, but my one piece of advice is just to try things out for a couple of weeks and see if it works for you. So try the flow writing thing, try writing in a notebook, try writing whenever you can, try writing in chunks, see what works. That's all you can do.
Awesome. I am also going to share one piece of advice, which is actually a resource. There is a really great book called DIY MFA, written by Gabriela Pereira. She is, I've known her for a long time. And her book is really great. It's really, really ideal for helping you build a writing practice and also be more intentional about your reading and your learning. And I really think that it is an invaluable resource for new writers, especially. And all right, we are at time. So I am going to have you all very quickly remind people who you are and where they can find you. And I'm also going to be sharing some links in the Discord for folks. So whoever wants to start with introducing yourself, go ahead.
You can
Not
just
all at
say
once.
again, I'm Jade. I edit, and you can find me online at eclipsewordsmithing.com. I will put links in the Discord.
And I'm Priya Sridhar. I'm a speculative fiction writer and copywriter. And I also edit a publication on Medium, the Permanent Nerd Network. So if you have a Medium account and want to submit and you have something nerdy about any topic, send it my way. And don't forget to check the submission guidelines. You can also find me at priyajsridhar.com. I also have a new book out, Understudies, about a theater group that makes a deal with gargoyles for free rent and new space. I'll put the link for that in the Discord if anyone wants, and definitely message me if you want a review copy by PDF.
I would make some pretty dark deals for free rent, not gonna lie.
Same here.
Especially in the city.
Yeah.
Especially in the city.
Can it be like free rent where I move above ground? Because the way rent is going in this city, I'm never gonna get out of this basement.
Yeah, well, the apartment in the book is basically theater space that's been turned into a soundproof bedroom and music room.
That
and
sounds
with a very
amazing.
nice bathroom with a vintage
Glorious.
bathtub.
Oh, that's amazing. All right. Kelly, I believe.
I'll DM you the book.
You can
Yeah,
share your.
me and Serena. So you can find me online, kellydoherty.com, and then Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all things. DM me. I always love chat.
And Serena?
Yeah, I'm Serena Olibari. I write mostly science fiction and climate fiction. My book comes out in May. It's called Another Life. The premise is it's about the beloved leader of a peaceful eco village who learns that she was a really bad person in her previous incarnation, her previous life, and all the problems that causes for the village that she runs. So if you spell my name right, I am very easy to find on the internet. There are 2 of us on Instagram. So I am Serena Ulibari author. I finally started an Instagram to keep my poor name twin from being tagged and things about me, because there's only one other in the world with my name. But I'm on Twitter. I really like Mastodon, Instagram, and you can also, feel free to DM me through the Discord. So, yep.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all very much for being here today. This was really great. This panel was originally part of the event Storycrafting Sessions Drafting. This was a virtual conference hosted by the Weeknight Writers Group, a social enterprise dedicated to providing accessible and affordable community and educational supports for writers. To find out more about the Weeknight Writers, go to businessforauthors.com/weeknight-writers. This event was also created in partnership with Renaissance Press, a small publisher dedicated to supporting diverse voices. You can check them out at pressesrenaissancepress.ca.